I woke up at 7 a.m. for this. I sat through a genuinely really cool launch party live stream where they cruelly set the clock back an hour just to mess with us at one point, all to finally see Marvel's first family after over 5 years of waiting since their first initial announcement, and I am so happy to say that this wait has been completely worth it because this teaser looks fantastic. Okay, but in all seriousness, this teaser was all I could have ever wanted and more. From the visuals emulating that swinging 60s aesthetic, to Michael Giacchino's stunning soundtrack that will be stuck in my head all year, to the interactions between the team, this is shaping up to be the Fantastic Four movie I've waited my entire life to see, and gets me even more excited than I thought was possible, which is a lot. I mean, I put this as my most anticipated project of 2025 in that video I did a few weeks back. I thought I could not get more excited for this film, and here comes this trailer to absolutely blow my expectations away. It is so perfect, and as a longtime Fantastic Four fan, it's nice to have this kind of reassurance and faith in a movie for once. So without further ado, because knowing me, this is going to go on for probably like 40 minutes or something, considering how much I like to yap about these trailers, but let's just jump right into it, because I have a lot that I need to talk about. Despite this trailer only being like a minute and 43 seconds long, they packed so much in this that is going to have my brain working overtime trying to figure out and analyze in the best and most rewarding ways. But here's the thing. Oh my god, I can't tell you how excited I am that I can finally do this bit with a picture of the Thing from the actual movie now. It's the ultimate payoff and so satisfying to see his design fully formed. Obviously, we got a little bit of a tease of what he'd look like in that first initial piece of concept art they dropped almost a year ago, which is crazy timing. And there were some leaked set photos that I guess I can show now. I don't know. Come and get me, Marvel. What are you gonna do? Oh, I'm gonna regret saying that, aren't I? But we've gotten a few glances of what he could look like. Nothing that was his actual concrete finalized design though, because obviously they're using CGI here. As great of an actor Eben Moss Bachrach is, he can't do method acting that well to where he becomes a rock man. To my knowledge, at least. Maybe he is. They absolutely killed his design here. It is the most flawless Thing adaptation we could have possibly wanted. No disrespect to the Michael Chiklis thing, full disrespect to the Fant4stic thing, but like, they were never able to properly replicate what the Thing is supposed to be. The Chiklis suit always just seemed like a guy in a suit, and it was some really impressive practical prosthetics, but that was never the Thing to me. This seems like this larger-than-life being and someone who's actually been transformed into a rock monster, and I am obsessed with that. The Thing is my favorite member of the Fantastic Four, so to see his design finally done in a way this perfect warms my heart so much. I can't tell you enough how much I love that big, bold, bulging unibrow on his face. It's his most distinct feature, and I can't believe it's taken us this long to properly see it in a version of the Thing like this. He literally looks like an Alex Ross painting come to life. I cannot believe they managed to pull it off so well. Fair warning, you're gonna hear me say this a lot, but I absolutely love the fact that you can see his beautiful, ever-loving blue eyes stick out so much on the design. It really pops contrasting against that orange rocky texture, and gives you this important window into the Thing's character, because obviously he has this rough exterior, but he's the most prominent example of maybe any character ever of a gentle giant and someone who's just the warmest, most heartwarming and wholesome person on the inside. So to see that connection to the eyes so prominently is huge and something I'm very glad to see. I also cannot get enough of the sound design, just when he moves and does literally anything. This little moment here, especially when he starts clapping his hand, and it actually sounds like two rocks smashing together, is such a good attention to detail. It really goes a long way in making this character feel real, like he actually exists in our world, when you see him moving in very natural ways and sounding like an actual being made of rocks. And I cannot tell you enough how much I adore the fact that he's wearing clothes the entire time in this trailer. After Fant4stic's very cursed adaptation of the Thing where they just made him naked for some reason, it's so welcome to see him fully clothed up, and with some crazy drip, might I add. Like, he's got that shit on. I don't think I need to explain the Thing's character arc to you, but with someone who's always constantly struggling with acceptance and seeing himself as a monster and hating who he's become, the Thing wearing clothes is such an important aspect of his visual design to show him in this more human way, as they make him seem very approachable and just a regular guy who just happens to be also made of rocks. It's exactly how this character should look, and I'm shocked it's taken us this long to get here, but I'm so grateful to Marvel for doing what needed to be done and giving this guy his sense of style back. But I think my favorite part of Ben here is the fact that they didn't edit or change his voice at all. Eben's voice is basically perfect for the Thing already. The way he speaks is so gravelly in the best possible way to where you don't really need to do any effects on it, and I think that it's a mistake to ever try and really alter the Thing's voice, because when he sounds like a normal guy, it goes a long way in humanizing him more. It drives home the point so well that he is different in appearance only. He still sounds the same. He still has this incredible personality. It's just the fact that he has this visual distinction that scares people. But again, you just get to know him and you realize, oh, he's the greatest guy of all time. Obviously, with the comics, we don't actually have any preconceived notions for how he's supposed to sound. And I feel like a lot of people would assume he sounds like a giant rock monster. But it is so much more impactful when he just speaks in his normal, natural speaking tone to really make it clear that he's just a normal guy and that you have nothing to be worried of. And again, Eben's voice is incredible for this. He already has that natural New York accent down, and you can really hear him enunciating some words in there. I also think that's very funny that the first time we see him, he's cooking, because obviously Eben plays Cousin Richie in The Bear, so I just think it's a fun little shout out that he's cooking and messing up Herbie's dish. We only get a few snippets of it here, but Ben's personality seems to be spot on. We get to see this relatable everyman guy who always brightens up every room he enters as he's joking around with Herbie and cooking food, and he's clearly got a smile on his face when he's around the people he loves and who he knows care for him. But then you see him go outside as he deals with that internal struggle of looking like a monster with his classic and incredible trench coat and hat look, and for my money, the best shot of the trailer when he's watching himself on the TV and the feed cuts out and he's staring at his own reflection. That is the most perfect thing symbolism you could get, and I'm over the moon with the fact that they're going all out with this character. They nailed the two main sides of his personality, and to me, it really seems like he's going to be the heart of this film, which is the smart thing to do. And I probably already said one thing was my favorite, but I guess I'm changing my mind, because my favorite thing about the Thing in this trailer is the fact that kids look up to him. I think that's such a sweet detail, and I think that goes a long way in kind of helping Ben deal with this internal struggle and fight that dialogue off when he sees children looking up to him and putting on Thing masks. Like, that's gonna go a long way in bolstering his self-confidence as people have action figures and want to be like him. It's the little details like that we barely see for a second in this trailer that give me so much confidence in this film and how they're handling these characters and doing them correctly. It's a great inclusion, and it just gives me so much faith that they're doing my man right, which I desperately needed after the Fant4stic movie gave him 55 confirmed kills for some reason. I'm never gonna let that point go. It is the upgrade of the century, going from naked war criminal Thing to ever-loving blue-eyed Thing. God, I'm so glad we're here, and we're finally moving past that. But speaking of things that I'm glad are here, if that segue makes any sense, Herbie's in the trailer. We got our first look at my GOAT, my beloved King Herbie. I love this guy so much. He's the most precious robot in the planet, and I think that if you hate Herbie, I hate you. I'm just gonna make that clear. If you hate Herbie, we're no longer friends. You're not allowed to watch my videos anymore. I don't trust you. I don't like you. Herbie respect is a mandatory thing here. I hope they make as much Herbie merch as possible for this movie, because I will buy it all. I don't know how they did it, but they put so much personality in this guy. I love the way he's put together with his eyes being these tape recorders, and the fact that he's wearing an apron. He's the best. I love him. I would kill and die for him in a heartbeat, okay? Do not mess with me and Herbie. He's my ride or die. It's really great to see them get the Thing and Herbie included in this, but for me, the most important thing you can get right when adapting the Fantastic Four is Sue Storm. So many times, arguably every single live-action adaptation of her has completely dropped the ball. They treat her like an object or some damsel in distress, when in reality, she is the glue that holds the Fantastic Four together, probably the most important member of the team. No, not probably, definitely the most important member of the team. For this movie to work, they need to get Sue right, and this trailer honestly gives me a lot of faith that they're doing just that. I cannot tell you enough how much I love the fact that this teaser revolves entirely around her. She's doing most of the talking, we see most of her scenes, she's the one who gets the big final line at the end of it all, and I think that's great. I'm sorry, it's taking everything in me to not say fantastic every single time I use an adjective, because it is fantastic, alright? There have been a lot of rumors that Sue is going to be the lead of this film, and I think that's the best possible choice they could have made when developing this movie. It's so easy to get characters like Reed and Ben right. They're very nuanced, and there's a lot to dive into there with their psyche, Reed's work-life balance, Ben's internal conflict. And Johnny is probably the most straightforward member of the team, is this cocky hotshot. But so often, writers have loved to make Sue a one-note character, so by making her the lead of this film, you're basically forcing the audience to sympathize and resonate with her as we see things from her perspective. What makes Sue so perfect to lead the team is that she has dynamics with everybody on it. Johnny's obviously her brother, Reed's her husband, Ben's the only person who she didn't really know before joining the team, but they develop that bond together, and I think it's important to show why Sue is such a pivotal character to this team. She's without a doubt the protector of the team, and her powers reflect that, but I think this movie putting Sue at the forefront is a great idea so we can see what makes her tick as she deals with all this overwhelming stress of being the team's protector and being such a powerful character. Lean into her archaeologist background and show her as this daring adventurer on the team. Most importantly, though, something I touched on a little bit is the fact that she's the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four and one of the most powerful heroes in the entire MCU. There's this big misconception that all she can do is force fields and invisibility, but it's a lot bigger than that. It's not so simple as that she just turns people invisible. She can manipulate every single wave of light itself. And this movie needs to properly showcase that and let Sue be the powerhouse of the team. She needs to be the one coming in clutch and saving the others, as she acts as this tank and someone who can do some serious damage. If she was a killer, she could basically defeat any enemy instantly by just turning off their eye retinas and boom, they're blinded. Or putting a tiny force field in their heart and giving them a heart attack. Her powers are ridiculously dangerous in the best possible way, and I want this movie to explore that. And even by just going off the visuals alone, I think they're going to. I am obsessed with the way they look in this trailer. We get 2 very brief shots of Sue in action, and oh my god, that looks so cool. They actually put a lot of thought into the CGI and gave it this iridescent effect, and it looks so pretty. What I think I like the most about it is the fact that it's not just putting up this blue force field shield that we've seen hundreds of times before. The effect makes it look like she's bending light to her will and manipulating it to create this shield around her, and I think that's so much more interesting. It's a really inspired choice and something that I hope we're going to see a lot of in this film. The way the waves are shaking off her body is so satisfying to look at with that rainbow effect around her. I'm probably looking forward most of all to seeing how her powers operate in this movie, because you can get real creative with it and do some insane things that would pay off in the most spectacular way. We're just months away from finally getting a version of Sue Storm who can live up to her full potential and show audiences why she's so cool after pretty much 20 years of suffering through adaptations that don't care about her at all. Now we're gonna have a movie that makes her the main character, which is brilliant. It's a little moment, but I really love this interaction in the trailer where we see Sue comforting Reed. And I think the writing here is great because Reed is obviously feeling very bad about what happened to the family. She twists his words into a more positive perspective, and I think that's such a great way to look at her character as this backbone of the team, to where she says that Ben has always been a rock, which is a great understanding of Ben and his emotional vulnerability, or that Johnny is Johnny and he's always going to be like that, and that even though she's invisible, she's still right there with him, and that's all that matters to her, that she's here and there with the team. It's just a small thing that I might be reading too much into or overanalyzing, but I think that the way they're having her talk and approach these problems has such a great understanding of Sue's character and the kind of support she brings to this team. And on the topic of Reed, like, good god, man, Pedro Pascal is such perfect casting. I will never understand how people don't think he's right for this just because he has a mustache. Come on, you're really gonna throw away casting because he has different facial hair? Did people react this poorly when they first drew Reed with a beard in the comics before? I don't understand why we're so against a mustache. All that matters to me is the way Pedro's acting, which is incredible. I love the voice he's put on for this version of Reed that really embodies that 60s aesthetic and environment he was born in. That kind of voice fits Reed so well to me, and I think it's gonna go a long way in making him feel a lot less cold and calculating like some think he is, because that's not what Reed is or has really ever been. And at the end of the day, he's a big dork, and I think this voice really fits that. The idea of Reed and Sue making sure that the team has family dinner once a week, Sunday night at 7 o'clock on the dot, no later, is such a fun detail, because for someone who's so analytical and is always struggling to make time for everything in his life, that's exactly how he would operate on this. He pencils it into his rigid schedule to make sure that he always finds time for his family, and I love that. It embodies the family man qualities that I want to see with Reed. Also, this is a random bold prediction I'm gonna make now, but with how much they've been emphasizing the Sunday night dinners and how they're this routine part of their family's lifestyle, I think that the movie's gonna open with them having dinner, and I think that the inciting incident is gonna take place right as they're about to eat dinner, and then the final shot of the movie is gonna be them coming home and finally having that dinner at Sunday night as the clock strikes 7. I think that'd be such a fun, campy little moment that shows they've come full circle from their growth in this movie. I mean, that is if their planet doesn't get destroyed, but we'll get to that later. What I like seeing the most out of Pedro's take on Reed so far is the guilt he's clearly feeling, because he fully blames himself for that cosmic ray incident, and he sees what it's done to his family, where now his wife can turn invisible, his best friend is a rock monster, and his wife's brother lights on fire. He effectively accidentally stole all their lives, and that weighs on him. So I think it's great that he's being open with Sue about that, because that guilt is a huge driving force of Reed's motivation and the reason they become celebrities in the first place in the comics. There's this beautiful panel of Reed holding baby Franklin, I believe, where he's talking about the name Mr. Fantastic, and how only someone with arrogance would call themselves Mr. Fantastic, and when these horrible things have happened to him and his family that the public could so easily fear, I love the idea that Reed turns them into marketable celebrities because they're a lot less likely to be feared that way. Besides trying to learn everything, guilt is the single biggest motivator for Reed Richards. So obviously I'm reading too much into this one line, but just the fact that we're seeing that guilty side of Reed at all in this teaser trailer, trailer, it gives me a lot of faith that we're going to see a version of Reed who's really struggling with this dilemma of how he can help his family when he's done so much to hurt them by accident. I will say my one biggest nitpick with this trailer is the fact that we didn't get to see Reed's powers, but I'm not too bummed about it because if there's even any issues with the CGI on that, it's always so incredibly jarring for stretchy abilities. So they can take all the time they want to perfect that and make it look as good as possible. Reed already looks scary enough when he does things like this, so we don't need bad CGI on top of that. I just expect the first trailer to show him turning into a teapot or becoming a wall like he does in Marvel Rivals or something funny like that. I really need this movie to lean in with the silly and goofy ways that Reed uses his powers. It's one of my favorite things about him, and visually it's such an exciting thing you could do with film. The Fantastic Four aren't the most action-heavy characters, so I don't expect to see him squaring up with Galactus or something doing a fisticuffs, but just the idea that we can see Reed use his powers in everyday things, like stretching his arm across the lab is a classic one. Just show us how these powers have become a normal part of his everyday life and that he incorporates them into everything he does. I would love a shot where he's in the lab and you just see him with like 8 different arms reaching all around trying to get all this work done at the same time when he's overwhelmed knowing that Galactus is here or something like that. Because I think it's also important to lean into that overwhelming paranoia Reed can have at times, especially with a baby on the way, which I think could be a really big shakeup for this family, where Reed has gotten them to this place where they can feel comfortable and safe and not being afraid. And then all of a sudden they have a baby and that's going to shake up their whole life. And now Reed's going to be more protective than ever. And then you bring Galactus in right as they're getting lucky. It writes itself in this big paranoid mindset we can see Reed in as we have Sue kind of ground him and keep him based in reality so he doesn't go spiraling off the deep end, losing himself in his research. Like, one thing we see him research in this beautiful shot of him on the chalkboard, which, by the way, I'm so glad that he's writing on a chalkboard and not, like, dealing with holograms or nanotech or anything like that. It's so simple, but it's so much more effective and something I can imagine Reed would actually do. And they had this gigantic chalkboard installed in his home. But one of the interesting things we see on his chalkboard is what looks to be a wormhole, which makes me wonder if he's trying to discover multiversal travel, which I feel like is going to have a lot of big implications for Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. And if he's about to start building the bridge, which I think could be a really cool inclusion in this movie. If maybe he's going to a different universe to try and figure out how to stop Galactus. Or it could just be generic like sci-fi stuff they put on a chalkboard and I'm losing my mind on something so small, but I'm just happy to see a version of Reed who's happily writing stuff down on a chalkboard like that and losing his mind, getting lost in his notes, because that is Reed Richards to me. He's the most analytical person ever and speaks basically entirely in theorems, but at the end of the day, he's so caring and will always be there for his family, and I think nobody's going to be able to pull that off better than Pedro Pascal. Someone who a lot of people seem to be unsure about in this film, though, is Joseph Quinn's Johnny Storm, and I know I've been saying this a lot. I really think he's going to surprise a lot of people. I don't think he's the person a lot of people, myself included, expected right off the bat would play Johnny, but I can't deny he has the charisma you want for Johnny Storm. We only get one word from him in this trailer as opposed to everybody else who got a little bit more talking to do, but maybe I'm just buying into the hype. I really think his delivery is on point here. I think seeing him in motion with that blonde wig on completes the whole look for me, and I can finally paint this picture in my head and see exactly what he's going to look like and how he's going to act as Johnny, which goes a long way in really solidifying himself as a great casting choice for me. He's also a really good actor, so I have no doubt that he's going to be able to bring that cocky side out of Johnny here. But just the fact that he's hanging around the Baxter building in his spacesuit is such a funny and fitting detail for his character. Like, of course Johnny's going to be lounging around in his spacesuit. To him, that was the coolest thing to ever happen. This is a guy who didn't think he had anything going for him in life before he actually became a superhero. So he's going to embrace that in every single way and wear that costume as much as possible. It's a little character detail that goes a long way in showing just how much Johnny's bought into his own hype. And I cannot wait to see more of that and how he interacts with the team, especially this version of the Thing. This isn't a version of the Thing who's constantly kicking himself. This is a guy who can joke around just as much. So I want to see them go head to head and really get each other angry. What we do get to see a healthy amount of in this trailer, though, is Johnny's powers in action, and I think it looks spectacular. The flame effect on him looks really good, and I love the trail he's leaving as he's flying by. We're seeing him in motion here, so we don't get a full look at how Johnny is when he's just standing there, but I really hope that based on that first poster we got a while back, he has the lines from his costume that give him that Jack Kirby art style. It would be so impressive if they managed to pull that off in a practical way, and I think it would go a long way in differentiating this version of the Human Human Torch from the previous versions, because like you can only do so much visually to differentiate a man that's on fire. So I think that going out of your way to add those lines could make him feel really distinct. I love the way the flying sequences are shot here too, as the camera is trying to catch up with him as he's zipping around the city, going in and out, dodging and weaving between buildings. It's a fun way to shoot the scenes and shows just how fast he actually is. But maybe the coolest shot in this entire trailer is the most subtle, and that's the fact that when Johnny flames on and flies away, his flames interact with the camera and we see the smudges on the actual lens itself. And I think that is so cool. It's not only a way to drive home this old school filmmaking style they're trying to replicate, but it's an attention to detail and shows just how much thought they've put into this movie and the camera work itself, to where something that's so simple as a flame on will affect the actual camera itself in this meta fourth wall breaking way that is so subtle you hardly even see it, but it is a really cool effect, and I hope we see more stuff like that throughout the film. Matt Shakman is such a talented director who I don't think people have appreciated enough. His work on WandaVision is next level, so it's a no-brainer to me why they included him on the filmmaking process here, as he's someone who knows how to replicate old aesthetics and has really fun camera work, and this is a prime example of that, so I cannot wait to see what else he has in store for Johnny here. And one of the last things we see of Johnny in the trailer is him shooting up into space, which I think is really interesting because obviously fire can't survive in the upper atmosphere like that without oxygen, so it's going to extinguish his flame, and then he's just kind of either stuck up there or he starts careening down to Earth so fast that he becomes a meteor. I'm very curious as to why he is flying up into space though. My big prediction here is that the Silver Surfer just made the proclamation that Galactus is coming, and Johnny's trying to catch the Silver Surfer as she goes back into space. We get this cool moment where Johnny's almost about to catch up with her, and obviously Johnny's not going to be able to keep up. The second his flames get extinguished, he's kind of cooked, as the Silver Surfer can get away and escape. I think that would be crazy, and I feel like that's the only reason I can think of for why he'd even want to fly into space in the first place. Because like, I know Johnny's a cocky guy, but I don't think he's cocky enough where he would try and fight Galactus in space. I feel like he'd know that's a losing effort. And I think it'd be a really cool flying sequence to see him and the Silver Surfer going bar for bar like that. Not to sound so greedy right off the bat, but like, I kind of need another trailer immediately just so I can get a better grasp of what Johnny's character is going to be like in this film. Just from this small little example here, I love what they're doing with him, and I cannot wait to see how he interacts with other characters in this universe and how he handles the fame and spotlight of this team. It's going to go straight to his head in the best possible way. And then that brings us to what I'm sure is going to be the big reveal and the money shot for a lot of people, finally seeing a version of Galactus look exactly how Galactus should. Oh my god, this is so long overdue. That leaked trailer a few months back gave us a look at what he could be, just seeing his eyes, but the fact that we're seeing Galactus like this in full and they're unabashedly showing it in the teaser trailer gives me so much hype that he's going to have a really big role in this movie, and we're going to get to see him in all of his glory. After having to suffer through him being a giant fart cloud for whatever reason, clearly not over that, it's really nice and refreshing to see Marvel embrace goofy comic designs and the fact that this giant towering man who can scale his size in different ways just arrive on Earth and walk around like that. I feel like they were testing the waters of it with the Celestials and Eternals, so if it's anything like that, I think it's going to be amazing. I would love to see Galactus arrive on Earth with his big face in the sky like that before we then eventually see him shrink down a little bit more just so we can actually meet the Fantastic Four and make his offer. The scale he has in this film is so good. I love seeing the fact that his silhouette is cast over all of New York City. That is a beautiful shot and gives him such an imposing presence to where, like, you know shit's gonna hit the fan when he arrives. And then when we get to see some Galactus back shots with it, I don't know if I can keep that in the video, we'll see. But we see Galactus from behind. I really like the texture on the costume as I look at it in this like 4K image here. It's where it looks like he's made of stars almost, with all these little bright spots on his body. And he's just a big purple man. It's the kind of thing I've been waiting to see for years. And I am so glad that this movie is adapting Galactus because of it. I feel like I have to make this statement every time I talk about Galactus because I know there are going to be comments, but Galactus being in the first movie is good. So many people love to think that he's this Thanos level big bad threat, but I don't see him like that at all. To me, screams like you don't really understand the character, and that's fine, because obviously he's been done very poorly in adaptions, but Galactus is not the big bad people think he is. I think he's best used as a force of nature that strikes at the worst possible time, and someone for the Fantastic Four to beat in creative ways. It's like trying to fight a hurricane. You know it's coming, you can only prepare for Galactus, you can't exactly stop him. Galactus is not a guy who you can have all the Avengers come together with the Fantastic Four and the Guardians of the Galaxy and they can punch him to death. Like, no, this is basically an elder god of the universe. If I'm not mistaken, he's the only survivor of the previous iteration of the universe. This is a cosmic being. You can't exactly punch him to death. As fun as it would be to see someone like Thor try, that's not how this guy works. He's an obstacle in the Fantastic Four's way, and I really hope they lean into that here by having the team outsmart him rather than physically confront him, because not only does it show how they work differently than the Avengers, but it shows that Galactus is someone who can come back in the future, or be this constant thorn in their side. Or maybe he even wins and he eats the planet, and that's how the Fantastic Four escaped the MCU timeline after Reed finishes building the bridge. But trying to turn him into this years-spanning saga-long villain, rather than having him be a Fantastic Four villain who appears every so often, is a huge mistake. So I'm glad that they're doing him in the first movie, especially with the fact that the previous time we saw Galactus, he was a fart cloud, and we need to fix that as soon as possible. Also, we see him approaching the Statue of Liberty here. What are his plans with it? What are you doing, man? Did you just see someone who looks as tall as him and lock in? Are we gonna have like a weird Surtur Statue of Liberty moment from What If with Galactus? Calm down, man. I don't need to be seeing all that. This next section is called Miscellaneous Thoughts and is basically just going to be a bunch of things I couldn't figure out how to structure in the actual video. But one thing I did want to mention real quick is that we see Sue and Ben having a conversation here at one point, and I think that's great because I touched on it a little bit earlier. Their dynamic is so often underdeveloped because they don't have much history besides being brought together as part of the Fantastic Four. It's not like they're related or lifelong friends. So I'm glad to see them developing that bond, and I'm so happy to see that they're showcasing them together like this, especially considering the fact that in 2015's Fantastic movie, they never even spoke to each other once, which is the most insane fact ever. I'm sorry, I'm talking about this movie so much. I love the idea that Ben is feeling down on himself after going out into the real world. So having Sue there to kind of comfort him and reassure him that everything's going to be okay as she takes on this role as the glue that holds the team together and someone who's being so supportive, it just feels fitting and right to have the Fantastic Four portrayed this way and to really hone in on this often underdeveloped relationship. I have a very strong feeling that these two characters are going to be the pillars of this movie and two people who really bring it all home. So I love to see them getting this kind of spotlight. What I don't love to see, though, because I know for a fact it's going to emotionally destroy me, is this moment here with Reed as he comforts Sue while she turns invisible for the first time. I'm so confident that they're going to make it so Reed thinks he's losing Sue forever. Because look at the pain in his eyes in this one shot here. That man is stressed out of his mind. And I think that guilt and those emotions he feels as he potentially loses the love of his life is going to fuel him in the future and throughout this entire movie to never let that happen again, as he uses this moment as a reminder of what it feels like to lose the people you love, and let that guilt fuel him and motivate him to make the Fantastic Four the celebrities they need to be and keeping them safe at all times. It's such a small detail and tweak to the origin that adds so much depth to Reed's character, and I want to say I can't wait to see it, but I kind of can because I know I'm going to be a mess bawling my eyes out in that theater, but it's going to be really worth it for some peak storytelling like this. One thing I also thought was interesting in this trailer is an appearance from John Malkovich, which right off the bat is insane. Never in my life did I think we'd see John Malkovich in a Marvel movie. I thought when we got the casting announcement he'd be playing Puppet Master because he's bald, and I just thought about bald Fantastic Four villains. Puppet Master came to mind, but I don't mind him being Red Ghost at all. It's not what I expected. I really thought they would go Puppet Master because I'm pretty sure Alicia's going to be in this film, played by Natasha Lyonne. That's not confirmed or anything, but like, look at Natasha Lyonne. That's Alicia Masters right there. So I feel like they could have tied Puppet Master in through her, but I'm fine with Red Ghost. Give us some underrepresented Fantastic Four characters like this. The main thing I want to see is the movie open with this spectacular montage of the Fantastic Four defeating all these different villains, as we get to see what their life has been like on this universe and show how established they are as a team, to where they fought characters like the Red Ghost, the Mole Man, maybe even Annihilus or something crazy like that. Just give us a taste of what they've been up to all this time in a really fun montage of them exploring uncharted territories like that. It's really cool to see, honestly, but not as cool as the final shot of this trailer, seeing the team all lined up in costume. It is life-changing. I adore it so much. I want this picture printed out and framed on my wall. No, I want this as my entire wallpaper. I want everywhere I look to see this picture of the Fantastic Four together, because I have waited my entire life for that shot right there. I love the homage to the Beatles here too. It's pretty much the same exact stage design. And I think that's a great comparison to make, because the Fantastic Four basically should be treated like the Beatles. Their popularity should rival that of Beatlemania, as we see people around the world obsessed with them. And oh my god, I can't believe I've gone this long without talking about them, but I love these costumes so much. They're already up there as some of the best in the entire comic book movie genre for me. They are flawless in every single way. If I had to change one thing, I would probably add the white around the collar of Reed's, just because I think it looks a little empty. But besides that, I think it still looks really good on its own. I'm so glad that this movie is stepping away from the over-designed or militaristic costumes we've seen in the past in the MCU. They can really lean into that 60s aesthetic and give us these campy costumes that feel like actual clothes the team would wear. And the Fantastic Four aren't exactly crime fighters first and foremost. This is a team of people who are explorers, so they don't need to have these armored suits or something insane like what John Krasinski's suit looked like in Multiverse of Madness, which I'm not a fan of. I'm always going to prefer the white and blue Fantastic Four outfits. I think they're so much better to look at, giving them these bright colors to show how hopeful and positive they are as a team, and I think they nailed it. I love the individuality of it all, too. I think it's a smart move to kind of give each character their own unique suit that still fit within the team uniform and color scheme. Sue by far has my favorite of any of the suits just because of the fact that it's the perfect balance between the white and the blue. I do like how Ben and Johnny's look with the white bleeding down onto the sleeves. I think it's a cool take on the suit, but Sue has that picture-perfect Fantastic Four costume I've always wanted to see, and I think it looks perfect, especially with the shade of blue they used for these costumes. It just pops so well on screen. The designs in this movie are genuinely fantastic. They feel so inspired as they take the familiar and reinvent it in new, exciting ways. Like, I love the Fantastic car in this movie, this retro-futuristic design that obviously we saw a little bit back at San Diego Comic-Con when they somehow flew it across the stage, which I still don't understand how they did. Like, I don't see any wires here. Did they just do that for real? Did they invent the Fantastic car? And if so, can I have it? It's just sitting around collecting dust right now. They don't need it. I'll take it off their hands. But it's gonna be so cool seeing the team get into this car and fly all around the city as they're adored by the public like celebrities, which I think this movie is doing a really good job with. I love the heavy emphasis we've gotten of them being public figures so far through just the marketing alone. Our first exposure to the Fantastic Four in that official teaser was through the perspective of children looking up to them, and I think that's beautiful. It's already showing us just how adored this team is and getting me even more excited that they're doing this team right. I also think it's really cool that all the posters they released yesterday revolve around the public adoring the Fantastic Four. They're really driving it home and making that point clear that this team is not your average superhero group. This is a team of scientists, explorers, and celebrities who are adored by the general public and are the superheroes of this earth. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more of that in the movie itself. I honestly can't think of the last time I was this happy after watching a movie trailer. I love the Fantastic Four so much. They're my favorite superhero team of all time, and this trailer was a gift in everything I could have wanted to see out of this movie. I love that they gave us just enough to where we could fall in love with these characters, but not enough to have any idea what's going on, which is a sign of any good teaser. But right now I think it's great that we have this movie to where most of the plot is a secret. We have no idea what's going on. All we know is that Marvel is bringing back the Fantastic Four in the most visually pleasing way possible. And as a diehard fan, I'm beaming with excitement. It makes me so excited for the future of the MCU now that the first family is finally here and they're going to play a huge role in it. It makes me so happy to see them here as the MCU gets a little more complete, because as much as I love the universe, it's always felt a little emptier without the Fantastic Four in it. I used to pray for times like this, and it's become a reality. Watching the trailer isn't enough. I need to invent multiversal travel or something so I can go live in that universe with them, because I am fully obsessed. It is going to take an unhealthy toll on me how many times I rewatch this. So I'm going to go get a head start on watching this until my eyes fall out of my skull, and then I can do this thing that Reed does. In the meantime, why don't you let me know what you thought of the first teaser for the Fantastic Four First Steps? I would love to hear what everyone has to say and continue the conversation down below. And while you're at it, you may as well like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you don't do it, I'm going to put an egregious amount of rock puns in my next video, and you might think you want that, but I promise you, you don't. So don't take this opportunity for granted and just subscribe.